I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that if you're a woodworker, you have the necessary tools to get started with these projects. I'm going to be using a piece of 2x10, and you want to get that cut 4 inches by 4 inches. Next, we'll get our center marked, and I like doing that with a speed square. Go corner to corner, mark the center area, and punch those marks. This next step I'm going to take care of with the drill over here at the vise. I got an 1.5 inch Forstner bit, and I'm going to drill down about 1 inch in depth. Next, I'll use the 3.5 inch hole saw bit and drill all the way through. And instead of being a dummy like me, don't use your bare hands. Grab a clamp instead, that way you have full control of this small piece. Or just keep a bigger piece and get it drilled out first and then cut it to 4 inches. After you get that piece all the way through, go ahead and get it cleaned up at the belt sander or with the palm sander. Next, get yourself some 3/4 inch stock, and I've got this piece of cedar, and you want to keep it at least 12 inches for now, and you want it at least 2 inches in width. And what we're going to do is cut a notch to where our piece will fit inside of our 3/4 inch stock. I'll start by pulling down to 3/4 inch and 3 inches. From that 3/4 inch mark, I'll be coming down at 1 3/8 inches. Now at the 1 3/8 inch mark and that 3/4 inch mark, I'll pull in at 1/2 inch. And that is what will be coming out. And once we get that taken out, we'll then get it cut at that 3 inch mark. Let me demonstrate. I'll be using my miter gauge for my table saw. I'll get my height set to 1/2 inch, line up my mark with the kerf of that blade, and sneak up on this notch. I'll be getting 3 of these 3 inch pieces cut all together. All right, so here's what we'll do. At our top, where that 3/4 inch nub is, I'm gonna pull in at 1 inch, right at the very top. And at the bottom here, I'll pull in at 1/4 inch. I'll take this roll of tape and line up the outside of the tape with those marks. And I'll scribe the outside of that roll of tape. That will be coming off. I'll take care of this at the bandsaw, and after I get that first one cut, I'll just use that to mark the template on my next 2. If you don't have a bandsaw, just keep the pieces long after you cut the notch, and you can take care of that with the jigsaw a little bit easier. Okay, so what I wound up doing over at the bandsaw after I cut those roundovers is I took 1/2 inch off of the top of that notch just because I thought it was a little bulky sitting over top. Also, I resawed these to 1/2 inch. Find a layout that you like and add a dab of glue. And we'll add some CA glue to act as a temporary clamp. Did you know that I had a merch shop where you can find the Add a Dab of Glue t-shirt today? Make sure to go check it out in the link below. Now that I've looked at it a bit closer, it sort of looks like the Wu-Tang symbol. If you know, you know. I've made so much money over the last decade making candle holders. It's one of the first things as a woodworker that I felt comfortable building, and I have no regrets.
That's my credo, no regrets.
I've got a piece of ash that is 4 inches in length, 2 inches in width, and 1/4 inch thick. And I've also got a piece of walnut measuring at 5 inches in width, 7 inches in length, and 3/8 of an inch in thickness. We'll start with our piece of walnut, and I'm going to pull up at 2 1/4 and pull over at center. We'll punch those intersecting points and take this over to the drill press and get that hole drilled out. Now before we do anything else, I'm going to pull from the bottom of my circle down to 1 1/4 inches. And at that 1 1/4 inch mark, I'm going to take that to the miter box and cut a 45-degree bevel all the way down that piece. Now what I'm going to do is from the long point of that bevel we just made, I'm going to pull back in at 3/4 inch, mark center at that 3/4 inch mark, Punch those two intersecting points. And I'm going to drill a 1/4 inch hole right at that punch mark. Mark the edge of those holes all the way to my bigger hole. And we'll be cutting out this waist. Just like so. The next thing I'm going to do is trace a 1/2 inch around my circle. And here at our notch we made, I'll come a 1/4 inch from the left and the right and square that over and out. This is the only thing that will be staying. We'll cut the rest of this waist out at the bandsaw. I'll sneak right up on that pencil mark I made, being careful not to cut over that line. Now, I'll take my piece of ash and I'm going to pull down at 1 inch and mark center. Punch that mark. And I'm going to be drilling a 1 inch hole with the Forster bit right through that punch mark. I traced out around my circle at a 1/2 inch again, and I continued it down sort of like a letter P all the way to the very bottom with a slight taper on both of those lines. And I'll take care of this waist over here at the bandsaw, sneaking up on that line once again, and I'll get it cleaned up over at the belt sander. Now bring your piece over to your bigger circle and set it inside of that notch that we cut earlier, and let the P rest right on top of that walnut notch, and mark the bottom of the notch right where that walnut is. That'll be at a slight little angle, probably a 5-degree angle. So whenever you go to cut this notch out, just be sure to account for that taper. Grab yourself a solo cup and you've got yourself a cool little drink holder. A little $8 project. For our next project, you're going to want to go up to your closest big box store, either Lowe's or Home Depot, and grab yourself 3 1x4 by 6 foot. Then head down to your electrical aisle, and what you're going to want to grab are these conduit clamps. These are a 1/2 inch conduit clamps, and they got 2 holes on either side, and that's the ones you're going to want. A 5-pack is right over $1.80. While I'm here, I'll go ahead and grab 2 of these 4-foot 2x6. These are pre-cut and they're only a couple of bucks. While I was there, I went ahead and picked up some of these 1-inch number 6 zinc Phillips head, and I also got some 5/8 inch number 6 Phillips head, along with some copper nails, but those will come later in the video. When picking out your lumber from Lowe's doing a rustic project, make sure that you look for some mill marks. Any kind of mill marks like these on these 1x4s are perfect to add to that rustic appeal. Start by measuring out to 23 7/8. The reason we're measuring out to that measurement is because this is a 6-foot 1x4 and I want 3 of these pieces out of one of those boards. These pieces will be lined up, butting each other, so what I want to do is add a chamfer to each side of our 1x4s because I want that to be noticeable. Now put your 3 pieces together and measure that width, and I've got 10 3/8. I'll take my other 1x4 to the miter saw and cut 2 of them to 10 3/8. We'll add a dab of glue. And we're gonna pop a Brad in his ass. I'll start by installing all 3 slats to one of those side rails first. That way the next side will be easy peasy. I'm using 1 1/4 inch brad nails and nailing this from the back side. Next, I'm going to be hitting mine with some mocha stain. I think this dark color is really going to add that rustic look that we're really looking for. We're going to be using our clamps that we had spray painted black, along with some 3/4 inch rope. I'll start by getting 2 pieces of rope cut roughly 12 inches. Next, I'll get the rope laid out in the orientation I want and get my clamps installed 1.5 inches from each side of this serving tray. I'm using those 1-inch Phillips head screws that I picked up from Lowe's, and I'll just get those spray painted black. Altogether, we'll put this cost at $15 to make. I'd post this online anywhere from $45 upwards of $60, and I'd have no problem getting that for this rustic serving tray. All right, so you remember those 2x6 that we picked up from Lowe's earlier. I'll start by getting a piece cut to 16 inches. Next thing you need to do is beat the shit out of this thing, quite literally. We'll give it a little bit of a whack. Give it a couple hole punches. The point of this is to make it look weathered and old. A little something like that anyways. You get my point. We'll hit this down with some sandpaper and get this thing finished up. And make sure you're wearing your PPE when doing this. This stuff is nasty and you don't want it to get inside your lungs. Now go to Amazon and get yourself some of this leather strapping. And I'll leave a link in the description where you can pick this up. You remember those copper nails? That's what we're going to be using to fasten this leather to our piece. We'll come in at 1 inch and put a nail right at the very bottom. Make sure you line them up even for aesthetics. Now grab your leather and pull it towards you and come over at 1 inch on this side. And we'll add one more nail at the top end of both sides, right in the center of that leather strap. Take a sharp knife and cut that flush with the bottom, just like that. And we'll do that same thing on the opposite side. Rock stars, you're looking at 35 bucks all day long. And that, my friends, is one big ass profit. For this project, I'll get some stock milled down to 3/8 of an inch thick, 12 inches in length, and 8 inches in width. I'm going to laser engrave this awesome American flag symbol that I found on Etsy, and I'll leave a link in the description where you can get that downloaded as well, and then we'll move on to the next step. After you get that laser engraved, go ahead and get everything cleaned up with the palm sander. I ordered some clipboard hardware off of Amazon, and it was actually fairly cheap. Line up this clipboard hardware center with your board. Punch those holes through the pre-drilled holes they have on that hardware. And I'll pre-drill with a 1/16 inch bit so I don't split my hardwood. Now, since we're at 1/4 inch and these screws are 5/8 of an inch, I need to go ahead and clip about 3/16 off of these screws. We'll go ahead and install that first screw. And we'll hit this thing with a coat of shellac-a-lacka. A quick, easy way to turn a big ass profit. And adding that personalization option, you're looking at about 15 bucks a pop. If you're just not a big fan of the clipboard sellers, get yourself some bottle opener hardware and use that instead. I was able to partner with one of my suppliers who sent me a shit ton of hardwoods to play with. I don't use SketchUp software, but when I get a custom order, I like to sketch out by hand what I'm looking to make. And I'll put that up on screen right here. I'll start with getting all my holes cut out. And I'm using a piece of walnut that measures 11.5 inches in length, 8.25 inches in width, and 7/8 of an inch thick. A typical beer bottle is about 2.5 inches to 2 3/4 in diameter. So I'm using a 3-inch hole saw bit to get my marks. For those of you who like plans, I will have some available shortly after I post this video. To get my layouts, I pulled in from the right at 2 1/8, 5 5/8, and 9 1/4. From the edge, I pulled in at 2 1/4 from the left and the right edge. And that gave me the layout for all of my holes. All right, what I'm going to do is scribe around the circles that I made with the 1/2 inch outline on each one of these circles, and we'll be cutting the exterior of the circles. Let me demonstrate. I'll sneak up with my bandsaw to those outlines that I made. After I make all those cuts, I'll head over to the belt sander and sand right up to those lines, finishing up this piece. Anything that I can't hit with the belt sander, I'll just have to do it with a little bit of hand sanding, which is never fun. Then it was time to work on the base. I'm using a piece of walnut the same size as the first piece of walnut. I'm gonna get it cleaned up at the joiner and the planer, and I'm gonna trace out the piece that we've already got ready onto the base. I won't be cutting any circles out, but I will be cutting the exterior curves. I'll get the majority of the waste cut out with the jigsaw and the miter saw. I'll tape the two pieces together and then get them cut flush with each other at the bandsaw. And finally, I'll use my chisel to get in those sharp corners and clean them up so they're nice and flush. Now, I need to get the piece that has the holes in it resawn, and I'm going to resaw that directly in half. My piece was 7/8 of an inch thick, so we'll wind up with two pieces roughly 7/16 thick each. Be careful when resawing this piece with those curves. The bandsaw will want to pull that piece, but as long as you hold it steady, you should be just fine.
Pretty little flower, magic for hours.
I decided to use this quilted maple for the upright of our piece. I went ahead and got it cut down to 8 inches in width, 12 inches in length, and I needed to resaw it in half. Ultimately, I'll clean it up after we resaw it all the way down to 1/4 inch in thickness. And for our bottom piece, I need to route out a dado to fit our upright. So we'll hold that at center, marking the very ends of our upright onto our bottom piece. And those marks will be where our dado stops. Now, I'm going to take care of this over at the router table with the 1/4 inch straight bit. However, if you don't have a router table, just use a drill with a 1/4 inch drill bit, and then you can jigsaw the rest of that dado out. The router table can be pretty sketchy at times, so I was sure to take my time, lined up my piece with the center of the bit, and took a little bit at a time, raising that height a 1/16 from each pass. Once I made it all the way through, I just needed to clean up those round corners with my chisel and give it a test fit. Oh yeah. The next step I took was to make the notches in my upright. I pulled up from the bottom at 3.5 inches, and from those 3.5 inch marks I pulled in at 1 inch, and we'll take that 1 inch notch all the way up to the top of the board, cutting that out with the bandsaw. So now we're left with a 6-inch width at the top of our piece. I'll transfer this 6-inch width over to my top piece with the holes in it and get that same 1/4 inch cut all the way through over here at the router table. After that, it was time to cut out the handle for this piece. I'll pull down 1.5 inches from the top and pull in at those 1.5 inch marks to 1.5 inches as well. Punch those holes and get those drilled out. We'll get that waste cut out, transferring the edge of our holes across our piece. And we'll use our jigsaw to get that waste removed. I then took the piece to my vise and I'm going to add some little grooves for fingers to slide through, and it just makes it a little bit nicer to grab. You can find these cylinder sanders for your drill on Amazon. I decided that we were going to put a slight round over at the very top edges. I think that's going to really bring this piece together. After I got those roundovers done, there was only one thing left to do. We gonna add a dab of glue. Go down below the video and smack that subscribe button and hit that like button. It means the world to me that you would take the time to do something so simple that's absolutely free. Subscribe today. While that was drying, I went over to my laptop and downloaded a file for a Coors Light label. Coors Light, if you're watching this, I hope you don't sue me. So I decided to laser engrave that label on both sides of the upright. After that, it was time to get this piece assembled. I took it out of the clamps, added the glue in the necessary spots, and man, was this ever satisfying. That is so damn cool. I might start drinking beer again. After a little bit of touch-up sand, it was time to apply our poly finish. (1950). Dartmouth College. That is when one of the most popular drinking games was invented, and it is still the most popular drinking game for college students to date. Well, today we're going to add a spin. We're going to call this game Basket Beer. I think we could be onto something here. Let's build it. I'm going to be using this piece of leftover 1x6, and I'm going to get it resawn at 1/2 inch in thickness. I'll measure over to 8 inches and get that cut over at the miter saw. Next, I took it to the table saw and got it ripped to 4 inches. I pulled over 4 inches after that and went back to the miter saw and cut it at 4 inches. And now I've got two pieces 4x4. I'll take one of those pieces and mark center, punch those intersecting points, and I'll drill a 3.5 inch hole with the hole saw bit. Out of our leftover stock, I'm going to pull another 8 inches and get that cut at the miter saw, and then I'll rip that down to 5 inches. From the top, we'll pull down 3 3/4 inches. And at that 3 3/4 inch mark, we'll find the center. At the center mark, we're going to pull over 1 inch from either side. I'll square over that 3 3/4 inch mark. And at these 1 inch marks that we made from center, those will go all the way down to the bottom of our piece. While I'm taking care of this cut, be sure to smack that like button and hit subscribe. I've got all my pieces sanded down. The only thing left to do is add a dab of glue added up a glue, added up a glue, added up a glue, added up a glue, added up a glue. And we're gonna pop a brad in his ass. I'm installing that piece 1/4 inch up from that notch that we made. Line this up center. And now you're ready to play basket beer. Let's see if we're any good. Let's go take a shot. I'll have to think up some rules on our basket beer, but I think it could go somewhere. I would definitely build a set of 2 and sell them like that with the cups included and the ping pong balls included. I'm using a wooden ball that doesn't bounce very well. But comment your thoughts below on what you think some of the rules should be for our basket beer. I'll never forget the time that I was asked if I wanted to play cornhole.
What the hell is even that?
I had no clue what was going on and what they were talking about. But come to find out, it's a very popular bar game or a backyard game. But what about those folks that are stuck in the office all day and they're just craving to throw that beanbag? Well, I think I have a substitute game. For this project, I've got a piece of 1x6 that I got resawn to 1/2 inch in thickness. And I'm gonna pull over at 1 inch, take this to the miter saw, and we're gonna cut that 1 inch mark to nothing at the very bottom right. Let me demonstrate. We'll line up the kerf of our blade with that 1 inch mark, turning our miter until we line up with the edge down here. That'll wind up being at 10 degrees. We'll make that cut. We'll turn our miter back square, and then we'll just line up the kerf of our blade with the very upper corner here, and then we'll have the same exact cut with 1 inch down here. And there you go, your 2 pieces. We'll grab the remaining piece, and we're going to bring that to the table saw and get that ripped to 3 1/4. I'll then take that piece and pull up to 6 1/4, and I'm going to cut a 10-degree bevel at that 6 1/4 mark, making the long point at the top. So this is our top, and we'll flip that over. And I'm going to come in from the left and the right side 1/4 inch and describe a light little line just for a reference point. We'll grab our angled pieces, add a dab of glue, and we'll set those at those marks we just made at 1/4 inch in and flush to the bottom of our piece. And hold down pressure for about 10 seconds. And we'll pop a brad in his ass with the 5/8 inch brad nail. Now from the top here, we'll pull down at 1.5 inches. We'll pull center and we'll punch that hole. And I'll use 1 3/8 Forster bit to get that hole drilled out. And there you go. Let's see if I can hit one. I'm not very good at this, huh? All right, we got to concentrate. Oh yeah, baby, let's go. Slide up to Lowe's and grab yourself a 1x4x8 for around $8, or you can get the furring strip like I typically do for around $4. That's less than the price of a number 2 from McDonald's. What? All right, so here we go. First thing we're going to be doing is cutting 2 pieces to 27 inches. Next, we're going to go ahead and pull some measurements. We'll start by pulling from the right side to 3.5 inches. From that 3.5 inch mark, we're going to be pulling over 5 inches until we reach the left side here. And that will give us 5 marks altogether. The next step we'll take is at those 5 marks we just made, we'll pull up from the back side at 1.25 inches. Now go ahead and put a punch mark at these intersecting points. I'll be using an 1.5" Forster bit to get these holes drilled out, but first I'm going to go ahead and clamp both in my vise and use an 1/8" bit to transfer the marks to my next piece and also to avoid blowout. I'll drill down halfway from the top side, flip it over, and drill the rest of the way through my other side. Alright, now that we've got those taken care of, we'll start at our 3.5" mark and we'll lay our piece down with the thin side of our hole to the right. We'll set our square up against our left side here with our 45 facing the left side. We'll find the edge of our hole on the right side of that hole. Once you line up that square with the edge of that hole, we'll scribe straight up to the top. Now we'll come 3/4 inch from that line we just scribed with the same 45-degree angle and scribe a line up to the top there as well. And this will be coming out. Now go ahead and finish marking out for the rest of your holes. Now there are several different ways that we can get this waste removed. Let me demonstrate. We'll take it to the miter saw and turn our miter to 45 degrees. We'll line up the kerf of the blade with our lines and make those cuts. Just be sure not to cut into the back of your circle. If you don't want to risk overcutting, you could even use a jigsaw, or you could even use your bandsaw. Out of these 3 options, I like the miter saw because it leaves a cleaner look. Get yourself one of these cylinder sanders for your drill. This is one of the best tools that I've got laying around the shop. It'll make quick work of cleaning up all these holes. Now that we've got these 2 pieces cleaned up, we'll set them to the side for now. And with the remainder of that 1x4, we'll get 2 pieces cut to 10 inches. I'll be using pocket hole screws to get these 2 pieces fastened to our side rails. I'll drill 2 pocket holes in the back side of each of those 10-inch pieces. Now, before we do anything else, I'm going to take this piece over to our router table and get 2 key slots routed out in the back side. We'll go ahead and pull down from the top at 4.5 inches on both of your pieces. And then we'll pull down to 19.5. Now, my one piece with the key slots, I'll put at the top. The piece without them, I'll put right at the bottom. I'll be using some 1.5" pocket screws, and I'll start by lining up my pieces with those marks we just made, and I'm going to clamp them together. I'll go ahead and hit it one last time with the sander. I hope that you can find some time to drop down below and hit that thumbs up button. It really helps. Now let's slap some finish on this bad boy. I'm using some of this red mahogany stain and it's oil based, so I'll put about 2 to 3 coats on it, wiping down between each coat. So I want y'all to take a look at what some of these hat racks go for on the online platforms. Check this out. For the single hat rack, those range anywhere from 65 upwards of $100. So for this double one, I should have no issue getting close to $100 for this. To spruce this thing up a bit, you could do dowels on the sides here with the contrasting wood. I think that would be a great look, and definitely look into adding those personalization options for your piece. That adds that value that you're looking for. I'll be using a piece of 1x8 cedar and a piece of 2x6 yellow pine. We'll start with our 2x6. Pull over at 10 inches and head over to your miter saw. Get your bevel set to 15 degrees, and that 10-inch mark will be the long point of that 15-degree bevel. Now that you got your 2x6 cut, set that to the side, and on your 1x8, you're going to pull over to 7 1/4 and get that cut square at the miter box. Next thing you're going to need is a piece of cedar ripped down to 2 inches. You can use the leftover out of that 1x8, or if you got a piece of scrap, you can use a piece of scrap. I'll be using this 1x4. Now, on one end of that piece you just ripped, pull over to 1 1/4 inches. And at that 1 1/4 mark, find the center of your 2-inch rip at 1 inch. And make a punch mark at those intersecting points. With an 1.5 inch Forster bit, I'll drill a hole at that punch mark. I'll drill halfway through on one side and then halfway through on the other side to avoid any tear out. Scribe a 1/4 inch away from that hole, halfway up that hole that you drilled. We'll cut that waste away with our D-wall jigsaw.
Jackass.
Next, we'll pull down from that circle at 3 inches and get this cut at the miter box. Before we move on to the next step, go ahead and hit your piece with some sandpaper to get it cleaned up. Now from our long point on our 2x6, I'll pull up at 2 3/4 towards the center of my 2x6, and then I'll mark the center of my 2x6. And we'll add a dab of glue, add a dab of hoop, add a dab of glue, add a dab of glue, add a dab of hoop, add a dab of glue. We'll add some CA glue to act as a temporary clamp. We'll line up the center of our piece here with the center of our 2x6 right at that 2 3/4 inch mark above that mark. Make sure you're square and hold down pressure for about 10 seconds.
A few moments later.
And I'll get this reinforced from the back side, drilling out a hole to add my 2.5 inch T20 screw. Before we do anything else, we need to boogie. So, sugar boogie. Before we move on, we're gonna give it a couple of whacks. Every time I beat my piece up, I get all kind of suggestions in the comments. But so far, my favorite is take some buckshot and birdshot and shoot the piece. I'd like to hear your suggestion, so drop a comment below. I'm gonna try something new with this hole saw bit. Just put half of it on there. Give it a couple whacks to put some holes in it. All right, I've got this sanded down, and we'll take our 1x8 piece, and from the front, we're gonna pull in at 1.5 inches. Let's make a light little mark. We'll add a dab of glue. We'll add a couple dabs of CA glue for a temporary clamp. We'll line up with those 1.5 inch marks, and we'll hold down pressure for another 10 seconds. And we're gonna pop some brads in his ass. And I'll be applying a coat of shellac. Now, if you wanted to be basic, you can take and drill out a 3.5 inch hole with the hole saw bit in a piece and mount it to your wine bottle holder. And although that would be pretty cool, that would just be a little basic for my touch. And one thing that I'm not is basic. So here's what we'll do. Pick up some upholstery tacks, and they sell those at your big box stores, or you can get them on Amazon. And grab yourself some leather strap. And I'll leave a link for this in the description where I picked mine up from. Grab a tack and unroll your leather. And I'm gonna come down about 1 inch from the top and line up the edge of my leather flush with the edge of my 2x6. And I'll go ahead and install that tack. I'll go ahead and grab my wine bottle and slide it through just like so. And I'll wrap it around my wine bottle, holding it snug, but not too snug. And I'll go ahead and install my second tack. Off of my prototype, I've already got 10 custom orders coming in for these at $35 a pop. Out of one 2x6x8 and one 1x8x8 cedar, I can get 9 of these built. 9 times 35, that's around $315. That, my friends, is one big ass profit.